paying over the calendar year more than this particular. How are you doing, April?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm looking forward to it. We're playing with some new things here in the live stream. I just realized that we might have made a strategic error in putting up the countdown timer because now the replay is going to start with the countdown timer. So people watching the replay are going to have like 4 minutes and 50 seconds of bum, 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 unless they fast forward. Or
It's
if we
kind of
trim it,
like
in which
that
case we lose the
exciting music,
chat.
though.
I don't know. It was a catchy tune. It was a
It
catchy
was. It
tune.
was like I was like boom, 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 boom. I feel like I was marching.
Good. We're getting there. So everybody, welcome to the show this week. We're really excited with Webinar Wednesday this week. We're going to be talking about a topic which is so topical and near and dear to all of us as we're developing new and massive chops around the whole world of online meetings. The new Mac versus Windows question: is it Zoom or is it Meet? And there are a lot of other contenders, of course, but I think it's going to come down to these two. And I don't know, there are other good players in the marketplace. We had folks reach out to us from people like WebEx and stuff like that, saying, "What about us?" And they're good, but I think it's going to be these two at the end of the day. Just the way that things are kind of shaping up. So let me fill you in on what's happening. We are here on Webinar Wednesday. We do a free weekly tutorial every week here on Webinar Wednesday. For those of you who are new to us, it is a simple training. We're not selling anything. We're just trying to help you improve your productivity and help you develop more skills and knowledge about the online space. Just a couple of weeks ago, we started to deliver it here on the main channel on YouTube Live. Previously, we've been doing this for 4 years nearly, I think. This is our 145th Webinar Wednesday. We used to just do it as a webinar and use a variety of different webinar tools, but we thought there's not enough going on in 2020. Let's see if we can make it work as a live stream. So we're taking much of what we did in the old webinar and we're trying to deliver it now through YouTube Live. So it's still a little bit of a work in progress. So if we have any stumbles, we'll ask you to forgive us as we figure things out. I need to do a special shout out and thanks to all of our patrons. This channel, Dottotech, is supported through the generosity of our patrons at Patreon. People financially support us to help us produce content such as this particular webinar. And you can visit us at patreon.com/Dottotech. And there you can also sign up to support us. But many of you are our patrons, and so to all of you who are there, a great big thanks. Now, one of the perks of being a patron is you get access to all of the replays of Webinar Wednesday that we've done up to now. This particular lesson or webinar that we're delivering today, I guess call it live stream, but live stream Wednesday doesn't trip off the tongue nicely, so we're going to keep calling
I would agree.
Webinar Wednesday. This particular webinar, we're making little changes. One of the changes that we're making is we're going to leave it live in replay if you happen to have to jump out for a week. We're going to leave it up for the entire week until next week's webinar launches. So that's one change. We used to just leave it up for 48 hours, but then I had to remember to take it down, and we've decided that we're going to leave it up for 48 hours. But our patrons get access to all of the replays, all 145 replays in our webinar vaults. So there's plenty of good perks for them. Today's topic, as I said, is going to be Zoom. Now, I pre-recorded a demo as we compare. Now, this is not, I'm going to give you one caveat right up front. This is not a training on using Zoom or using Meet. I'm going to be comparing the two applications. Some of the comparison is going to be factual based on the actual speeds and feeds and specs. And some of it's going to be on my opinion based on the use case and how it fits. But we are comparing the products. We're not teaching you how to use them. If you are interested in learning more skills around using either of these, Zoom or Meet, I will refer you to the other videos we have here on the channel, or we will send out an email after the replay with the resources that will include the playlists of all of our videos on Zoom and Meet. And we've got quite a few of them. So there's some good resources there if you want to learn and develop more skills around doing things like screen sharing in Zoom, or how to deliver audio better, or how to present, just basically setting up your calls. We've got some good tutorial videos in our
Your timing
regular
is
video
perfect
series
on this, by the way.
Sorry?
Your timing is perfect around this topic, but because of kids getting back to school and, I mean, they're actually Scott mentioned here, his wife, she's teaching with Zoom, and then they're also using Google. So they're using both, because I think
Yes.
there's confusion in the marketplace of like, what is the better tool between the two, right? And
There is.
yeah.
And a lot of times we're forced, especially for a lot of the people that have kids in school, the schools are forcing a lot of people down the channel of doing the Zoom, of doing the Google, using the Google tool. And it's not always intuitive. The way that Google runs their accounts, especially with the Google Education version for teachers and all of that stuff, it's not always. People, for instance, are logged in their home Google account, their normal Gmail account, and then they're having trouble accessing their kids' account when their kids are signing in. So there's lots of things to frustrate us as we go along. Now, again, we're not dealing with those today. Today, it's mainly a comparison, or just a comparison of Zoom versus Meet. So now, as is our normal, I pre-recorded the demo. The demo is about 20 minutes. We're going to be streaming it from my desktop today. We're using Restream, which we are looking at using more regularly here on Webinar Wednesday. Happy with it so far. Love the. I'm hoping that the quality of the stream has been good for everybody. It seems to be running pretty well at this point. But we've got about a 24-minute video to run, which we go through the comparison. While that's happening, April and I will be in chat. We will be capturing as many of your questions as we can, answering as many as we can live in chat, and then once we're through the pre-record, we will return live and answer as many of your questions through to the top of the hour. So that is our master cunning plan for today.
Sounds like a good one.
I think we're ready to go. We've got lots of people, tons of people, 350 people in the room. I'm happy you guys were. It's kind of a sad day here in Vancouver because summer ended. It is pouring out. It's going to rain for the next 4 days. So I need everybody's sunshine and happiness coming my way to prevent me from being too depressed at what seems to be the end of summer for us here in Vancouver. So with that, let's check out Google Meet versus Zoom.
Awesome.
All right, a comparison between Zoom and Meet. The reason that we're doing Meet is this is kind of almost the biggest religious conversation in technology since the Mac versus Windows arguments that we used to have way back in the day. And I actually think it's a little bit unfair to the rest of the field to just compare Zoom and Meet. But at the end of the day, Zoom is the leader. It's the one that has really set itself apart from everybody else in this space. And the reason that I pick Meet as the most significant competitor has nothing to do with the technology of Meet or how good Meet is at this point, because it's frankly not anywhere near as good as Zoom or many of the other competitors. But it's the fact that it's coming from Google. And Google is, in my opinion, committed to making Meet a really significant player in the space. So ultimately, I think Meet is going to, with all of the resources of Google behind it and being part of that Google ecosystem, it's going to increasingly just keep improving in value. But right now, there's a large chasm between Zoom and Meet, as you'll see. In almost every aspect, you're going to see that, we give the thumbs up type thing to Zoom. But we should, even though we're not going to be talking about it right now, there are some wonderful competitors. We've got videos on some of the others. Jitsi, which is an open source tool, which I really like the look of, and you might, especially if you want a lot more privacy and a little more security as far as that goes, Jitsi might be a place that you want to look. The folks at WebEx have been working really hard and dramatically improved what was a pretty kind of an aged and rickety system. WebEx has improved a lot. GoToMeeting has been pulling up their socks as well. So there are other serious contenders in the space. But for our discussion today, we're going to compare what I think a year from now are going to be the two that are kind of dominating the space. And for us, it's important because we don't really want to learn multiple platforms. We don't want to be switching back and forth. And you want to integrate a tool that you can kind of go with for the long haul. So which one would you choose right now between Zoom or Meet? Or can you be using kind of them both in the same space? So I have a series of criteria that I want to work my way through where we compare them. And we're not going to be doing actual demos because demoing video conferencing software is just, it's not awesome. But I will jump into the interface as we go along today to help you with that aspect of it. And a couple of caveats before as well. Performance is one of the most difficult things for somebody like me to measure as far as recommendation goes, because every time that you launch a video conference, every time we do a live stream like this, there are so many variables that come into play that are going to affect the overall performance. As far as streaming quality goes, there's certainly the power of the host's computer, the internet connection from the host, but each one of the guests, their own internet connection, and their computers, and the service itself, how much pressure is being put on the service itself. With the, as how much bandwidth is being used up at that particular time, and are there outages somewhere? Are different servers, or is there different problems online in the world that are causing the internet to be a little bit sluggish on that particular at the time that you're communicating? So it's very difficult to really identify performance. But there's two things that I would like you to think about. One is, I was really impressed with Zoom early on in the pandemic, as we were starting to shut down, as we went through the first lockdown, and Zoom's traffic just exploded as people started to do Zoom calls from home, and we all started to start to figure out this working from home thing. I was really impressed with how quickly they scaled and how there was almost no interruptions or no degradation in service through that rapid growth, which there's no way on earth that they could have anticipated that they were going to face. That tells me that they have excellent engineering and excellent back-end infrastructure that they were able to grow at that pace. So kudos to them for that, for the ability to be able to grow and handle that at that particular point. Now, there is one other aspect when you talk about performance that you should think about. Google, the Meet product, is a completely browser-based product. Now, if it was coming from anybody other than Google, I would say that it could be a disadvantage for a video conferencing tool over a tool like Zoom, where the host is using an app. Most of the participants also use an app, but the host definitely uses an app, and then you can connect to the call through a browser if you choose. But the fact that Zoom has the control over the environment through the fact that they're using an app means that they can do some things with their video encoding and how they handle the streaming that gives them some advantages in quality long term over top of a tool that just lives within a browser. Because a browser is if you work within a browser, you have to work within all browser environments. Therefore, there's often compromises made. Plus, you're also at the mercy of the quality of the browser that you're streaming from. And so if you're streaming from a tool like a browser like Firefox, it might, with its current build, be a little bit better than, say, another browser like Brave is at that particular moment. Now, the reason that I say it's not as big a deal for Meet is because Meet comes from Google, as Chrome comes from Google. So hopefully those teams have kind of inner access to the best that the browser is capable of, and that the video conferencing tool is capable of, and that there's a lot of cross-pollination between them. That might not happen when you're talking about browsers coming from a different manufacturer than your streaming service. So there's I'd say overall, as far as giving, one an advantage as far as its technology over the other, it's pretty much of a muchness. I think that one cancels out the other as far as that's concerned. Now let's dive into some of the comparison of the features. Now, we're going to be talking about the free versions of both tools for the most part. I will, as much as possible, try and identify when one of the features that we're talking about is something that is only needed for the paid version, and then we'll talk about the value of the paid versions a little bit later on. But we're going to start with what I consider to be the main features, the main comparative features, plus the must-haves, the things that you have to do an effective video conference. And so the beginning, when we start talking about them, is there's a lot of similarities in the free versions. Now, again, one caveat is because of the pandemic, some of the services that we're talking about, the different service providers have made free for a period of time. Most of those extra free times are ending like next week as far as September 30th. So we're not going to talk about what has been added on available free that's later on going to be charged for. We'll consider that we're kind of in normal times as we talk about what you're paying for and what you're not paying for. So as far as the number of participants that you can incorporate in with the tool, you're limited to 100 on both platforms, even in the free version, which is a pretty darn big meeting. At the point that you pass over 100 participants in a meeting, really, you're moving into webinar territory as far as I'm concerned, because the whole idea behind meeting software is not just to present, but also to have engagement. So if you have anything, once you get above really 25 or 30 people in a meeting, it gets to be a pretty darn busy meeting. So 100 people as far as in the free version, that's pretty generous, and I think it covers most of our scenarios. Time limits. Meet allows you to have a 60-minute call with up to 100 participants. Zoom only 40 minutes. And this is the only place this is really the main limitation that Zoom has between the paid and free version. And there are a few subtle ones, but the main differentiating factor is that 40-minute time limit. And it sounds like a lot. But when you're on an online call, you'd be surprised how often you run out of time if you're in that free version. I've got lots of people who I meet with who send me their invite, and we jump on a Zoom call, and they're using the free version. And I'd say a good percentage of the time that we're in any meeting where we're talking about anything strategic at all, we end up running out of time. As a matter of fact, this morning, I have a consultant that's working with us on our Facebook ads, and we ran out of time on their free account partway through. And I think that was maybe it wasn't embarrassing to them. I didn't judge them on it, but it meant that in the middle of the meeting, I had to send them my code, which allowed us, because we have a paid account, which would allow us to stay online as long as we needed. So that's a powerful motivator to upgrade to the paid version, is that time limit. I think we go through 40 minutes faster than we realize in meetings. And also it illustrates to us how much time I think we often waste in meetings, because there's all the niceties at the beginning as everybody's kind of getting settled before you get into the main content. The number of people that you can see on screen at the same time, there used to be a limit of 16 people, I believe, in the Google Meet calls, and you could have up to 49 people on screen at a time of your 100 people. But they have updated. Here is my Google Meet account. If you go in and you take a look in the layout settings, you see that now with the tiled settings, which is the way that it's, kind of like that Brady Bunch look, you can now pump it up to 49 people on the screen at the same time, which is a lot of talking faces. But you have that ability. It's the default is set at 16. So they're the same there as far as that goes. So you can have the same number of people on screen at the same time. But all of the participants on screen aren't equal participants between between Meet and Zoom. One of the biggest issues that I have using a tool like Meet is the limited interactive tools that are built in to Meet. They are adding a hand-raising feature so that somebody can identify that they want to be, they have a question answered, or they want to be jump into the call. Whereas Zoom includes, here's the Zoom interface, they include a big variety of different engagement features, such as a reactions tab here that'll allow you to applaud or give thumbs up. That appears in the window. But then in the chat, we also have all of these other interactive communications tools where they can say yes, no, they can ask you to go faster, and they can even say, I need a break. They can add, if we click on the more, let me find it, there it is. We click on the more button here, you can say, I need a coffee break, I need 15 minutes, or giving you different types of reaction. So the ability of the guests within a Zoom call to give valuable feedback to the presenter is far more enhanced in Zoom. So the interactive experience between Zoom and Meet is a big win for Zoom. Now let's talk about how we handle some of the other interaction, which is chat. And I kind of, in some ways, like how Google Meet handles the chat interface better than in Zoom. In Meet, we see a interface which is very similar to what we see in a lot of webinar packages, which is we have a roster of the different people that are in the meeting in this, and they'll all populate here in this white space. And if we click over here, it goes over into the chat, so you can see the dynamic chat happening at that particular time. In Zoom, the chat is actually in a pop-up. You bring it up here, and you can pop the chat up, and which gives you access to it if you need, and you can actually move it around on the screen if you want and attach it to one side or the other. But this white space on the right-hand side of the screen here, this is a participant view. Now, it's very powerful in the fact that we can see all of the participants that are in the room, and you have the ability to mute people if they haven't muted their mic, or you can kick them out. You can do a lot of different security and administrative functions from the roster of people that you see here, which is a lot more powerful. You have the ability to control, the host of the meeting has the ability to control the environment very well. So this particular feature here, as far as the participants window, way more powerful in Zoom, as is the interactive features. But as far as the chat goes and just accessing and quickly having sidebar conversations or dropping links, etc., I actually prefer the way that Meet does it. One of the most important features that I think all video conferencing tools have to have is the ability to share screens. And indeed, both of these applications do a great job. Within Zoom, if you go down to the bottom right in the center, you have your screen sharing options, where when you click on it, up will come a dialog box that will allow you to share your screens, and also to optimize your video clips if you're uploading a video clip, if you're streaming a video clip through, which I appreciate, and to share computer sound if you happen to be sharing a screen that has sound incorporated in it. Oops, and I accidentally clicked yes that I wanted to share screens to no one in that particular case. Inside of Meet, they don't call it screen sharing. I don't know why. They call it present. But when you click on present, you can choose to share either your computer screen, a window that you have, and a window that you have, an application window that you have that's open. Or what was the other one that they have there? You can, a Chrome tab, a tab within Chrome. And if you do the Chrome tab, you should have, you have the ability to share the audio that is feeding through. So if you have to share a video that's playing in the Chrome tab, you can then share it. One thing that's missing here is, I believe, if you are sharing video from your desktop, the audio won't come through in Meet. I suspect it won't come through. It's something I haven't tested. But unless they're sharing the computer audio, which was that button that we saw within Zoom, it probably won't work. But overall, as far as screen sharing goes, I think we're dealing with pretty much equal players between Zoom and Meet. Now, one significant disadvantage that Meet has, as far as I'm concerned, in the free version, is it doesn't include any ability to record the meeting. It's so important, especially if we have meetings all around the world, and often team members can't make it into the meeting. So we're always within Zoom recording our meeting so that somebody that's in a different time zone can view that meeting, as well as just the safety of being able to go back over the meeting, making sure you're getting all of the notes. The ability to record a meeting is essential, and you can't do it in the base version in the free version of Meet. Within Zoom, you can, and you can record it to your local computer, and then the paid version, you can also do a cloud recording where you're saving it up to the internet with a limited amount of storage space, which is something you have to keep your eye on if you're recording all of your meetings. But the ability to record meetings, I think, in having that even in the free version of Zoom, is an incredibly valuable asset. Okay, my bias is showing now, but I think the most useless thing that people want, that everybody seems to be interested in, is the ability to have a virtual background. I hate virtual backgrounds, unless you do it right. Unless you take the time to have a proper green screen setup and do it properly with proper lighting, I think it's more distracting to see a bad virtual background than to see even maybe a little bit of a disorganized area behind you. Maybe I'm biased because I went through so much effort to create an environment that I wanted to share, kind of a living set in my own personal office here. But I'm not a big fan of the virtual background. And then it's an area that Meet is scrambling to catch up. So what they've done with Meet is they don't have the ability for virtual background yet, although it will be coming, I am sure. But instead, if we go under the options, you can turn on background blur, which is, if I turn it on, now it's going to be processor dependent, how good your computer is, etc. But you can see that it blurs out the background. But look, every time my head moves, it's you've got that kind of that trail of clarity behind, which I don't know about you, but I find more distracting than anything. It bothers me, and it creates it disengages me from the conference. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's my shallowness at work. But I'm not a fan of it. Of course, in Zoom, people are going gaga over the different virtual backgrounds. And you can add a computer-generated virtual background. Let's just go here into our video settings, our preferences. And here in the preferences, you can see the virtual background. Now, within the virtual background here, it's very powerful in Zoom, but it's only going to work if your processor will handle it. A lot of people get confused at this point using Zoom because they turn it on and they go, oh, I don't have access to the virtual background on my computer or especially on my smartphone if you're using the mobile app. And Zoom measures the ability of your computer. It only allows you to have a virtual background if your video card and your computer will processing can handle it. If it will cack up your computer, if it's too much processing power and it can't do a good job, it won't give you the option. So some people think that they're missing a setting or that it's only available in the paid version, when in fact it's available, but you just don't have a powerful enough system. Sorry. But talk about sophisticated. If you have a green screen, you can turn on the green screen option, and then you can do really clean and really nice virtual backgrounds, which if you're going to be, doing a guest hit on a TV show or something that you may want to do if the background of the room is not appropriate. But you can also just turn on the straight up virtual backgrounds, which kind of plugs it in and does the best job it can. And there it is. Isn't that just wonderful? Oh man, don't come on calls with me with that virtual background on, or unless you want to be mocked. I know I'm being shallow, I'm being judgy, but I'm just not a fan of the virtual backgrounds. So who wins the virtual background war? Nobody. We all lose. Okay, we're going to loop back a little bit into the screen sharing options, but not traditional screen sharing where you're sharing a slideshow or you're sharing what's on your computer screen. Within Zoom, you have the ability, if you click on the screen share, to share some things other than your computer screen, such as you can share connected devices, but you can also create a whiteboard, which I really like. And the whiteboard tool is really robust and it's interactive. So multiple, students, for example, or other people can also participate in the whiteboard with you. This is something that Google Meet does not have, although you can add a whiteboarding option by adding a Chrome plugin, but that's a fairly technical process. We have videos on it. But this whiteboarding option within Zoom, I think, is a real game changer, and it sets it apart. It's kind of the sophistication that allows you to have far more effective meetings, even within the free version. And it doesn't stop there. That screen sharing option, if you go in and you take a look in the advanced area, you also have the ability to share second monitors or to share music if you are a fitness instructor and you want to stream music in from one of your streaming services, you can do that. And you also can connect a second camera, like a document camera with this. So very sophisticated. Now, as far as security goes, there's really two different kinds of conversations in the security space. There's how secure is your meeting from outside eyes prying, and then how secure is your meeting itself from having unwanted guests visiting, etc. So there was this whole phenomenon of Zoom bombing, and this was a problem with the early days of after the pandemic started of Zoom, where because people had the same consistent name, they would use the same Zoom room for multiple meetings. Once people figured out where that was, they could come in unbeknownst and they could cause havoc. It was basically a form of kind of graffiti and vandalism as they would jump in and try and spoil people's meetings. Especially this happened to a lot of teachers, etc. So Zoom has enabled something called the waiting room, which is a staging area that allows you to just allow individuals who are supposed to be in the room access and have the host have control over that. And all of that is set here within the security settings. And when you start a meeting, everybody is in that staged waiting room beforehand. Now, Meet has approached that challenge from a slightly different perspective. They don't have a meeting room. They don't have a waiting room. But what they do have is right out of the gate, whenever you create a Meet meeting, it's got quite a cryptic name. It's not like you have the same room that you use over and over again. So it's almost like it's password protected, just with the join link because of this little string of characters here at the back end. That's unique for each and every meeting. So unwanted people that don't have, people can't stumble or try and hack into your meeting from afar. So that's one aspect of the security. The other aspect of security is there was a lot of concern. It's kind of died off a little bit, but there was a lot of concern about the fact that much of the development of Zoom is done in China. So a lot of people are having a lot of fears over anything coming out of China. So there was concern about overall security with Zoom as far as China goes. I think they've done a good job to allay those fears, and I don't really want to spend that time in this particular webinar talking about it, because if you do have fears in that space, you're going to have to do your own research, and any advice I give you is not going to carry water. You have to look at what the real security experts and what the security team and what the IT department within your own enterprise decide, or what your threshold for comfort is. But suffice to say that I'm comfortable using Zoom as I am comfortable using Google. But when we're talking about security, there are some other aspects maybe that fly under the horizon. So that brings us to the next feature, which is one place that Meet really crushes Zoom, and that is as far as transcriptions goes. Google Meet, from almost its earliest days, had this feature here, which allowed you to turn on captions. And if you turn on captions, what happens is Google has the ability to listen to what you're saying, and looky, it does almost real-time closed captioning, which you can save as a transcription file afterwards. Now this, while technically brilliant, is, I think, if we stop and think about privacy and security, should be kind of horrifying in some aspects. We're concerned about our privacy on so many levels, but you would think that if somebody wasn't actually hacking in and listening into one of our meetings, that they probably don't know what we're saying within a meeting. But here is evidence that Google has built into the platform the infrastructure for them to be able to convert everything that we say into text. And once it's there, of course, they can search on it and they can do all sorts of things with it. Now, they're going to tell us that they respect our privacy and they would never, ever, ever use this particular skill for evil or to spy on us in any way that they don't completely disclose to us. But I'll leave it up to you whether or not you trust them and believe them. But the technical aspect of adding closed captioning to a meeting, brilliant as far as Meet and Google are concerned. Now, what about Zoom? Zoom doesn't have it built in, but Zoom does have a third-party service which allows us to sign up and to use closed captioning. You can see right here that I've got closed captioning installed on mine, and I can, when I start a meeting, it will do closed captioning as well, but it is an add-on. It's not built into Zoom. It uses a third-party service that actually what happens is similar to what's happening right now, where we're taking our video feed and we're streaming it to YouTube. Your video feed is actually streamed to the third-party service, where their servers then encrypt create the text files. They use machine. It's not an individual doing it. It's a machine doing it, similar to Google. And then they fire that back and insert it into your Zoom feed. It's pretty cool. It costs a little bit of money every month for you to do if you choose that you want to do it. It's as slick as Google's, but it's a little bit more laggy. It's not quite as fast as far as Google's, but you do have the ability then to have it in both. But it's a paid service within Zoom. I'll leave it up to you to determine whether or not using a third-party service is a little bit more secure than having Google crawl through and do your transcriptions. Overall, I think we know that Zoom is a superior service to Meet at this point. What Meet has, the intangibles, is Meet has Google behind it. So you know that they're going to do nothing but get better. If you are already a part of the Google ecosystem, then if you're using Google Docs or you're using Google Drive, Gmail, those sorts of tools, then there's a lot of appeal to Meet. For example, you have right within your Gmail address bar an ability to start a meeting instantly. And so the convenience of using Meet for those quick ad hoc meetings is pretty profound. So I think that if you're looking at doing short, quick little jump-on meetings and jump-off meetings and they're not scheduled and planned in advance, I think in a lot of those cases, Google Meet is going to serve, because you can see it's got most of the basic tools you need for a meeting, but you can't really make it a rich meeting. You can't make it advanced the way we do with Zoom. Now, as well, with a part of that Google ecosystem is the fact that within Meet, you can also automatically create calendar invites. So when you create an invite for a meeting within Google Calendar, now Meet is incorporated automatically and shared, and the meeting is automatically created for you. So there's going to be a little bit of momentum and a little bit of benefit towards moving towards that kind of holistically if you're part of the Google ecosystem. Zoom can be plugged into those ecosystems through plugins and through add-ons, etc., but it's never going to be as natively integrated as Meet is at this particular point. But there is still a pretty profound distance between Meet and Zoom. If you purchase the Pro version of Meet at about $6 a month, really the only things that you're getting that you don't have in the paid version is recording. That's the main difference. And plus you can go longer than an hour with your meetings. I mean, you can do meetings then up to a couple of hundred people in the meetings or even over a couple of thousand people in the meetings. But typically speaking, that's not going to be a consideration at our level as we talk about it. Whereas with Zoom, if you pay the $15 for the Pro version, you have the unlimited time in the meetings, and you have just a wealth of additional features. So many features that we actually have, I think, around 10 videos that explore just some of the features, and they keep adding new ones. So Meet is going to be playing catch up for the meantime. But if your meeting needs are basic, if they're simple, if you don't want to have very sophisticated meetings, and especially if you do live in that Google ecosystem, I think that you can get by very nicely with Meet. You won't have as much fun as those of us using Zoom, but you can get by with your meetings just fine. And we are back. There we go. Lots of chat happening. That was all great. Oh, yeah. So, what was the kind of there was just so many different things. April, come on back on, help me out here. But that is the overview. Now, I only really concentrated on things that I considered to be the essential tools that you need. There was lots of conversation and comments that I saw going on, talking about other things like breakout rooms we never got into, and some of the more advanced features. We never talked about the fact that in Zoom, you can take over another person's computer for doing technical support. There's a lot of advanced features, and these are all in Zoom, that Zoom has that go way beyond. But we're talking about just as a video conferencing tool. So the only way to really compare the two platforms was to compare what I consider to be basic meeting requirements, things that you're going to do in a basic online meeting. Once we got into the more advanced features, there's just no comparison. I mean, Meet is not there, but Google is bound and determined to bring Meet up to that point. And you have to believe that if that corporation puts its mind to doing something, one way or the other, come hell or high water, they will eventually get there. Now we're going to
turning up your volume. It's low again.
Is my volume low again?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, that is interesting. So they're going to give us some more control. Let me just, I'll tweak it up a bit. Is that a little bit better there?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
So they're going to give us a little bit more control so we can see. We don't know our levels going out within any of these applications, but the folks at Rev tell me that we're going to have that functionality in the not too distant future. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll help with the quality. But the video audio quality was okay, was it not? It came through pretty well. At least every time that I checked it here, it seemed fine. Okay.
It did.
You got out of sync a little bit, but other than that.
It was a little out of sync, but I don't,
yeah,
I mean, it wasn't.
Okay, so we're going to get to your questions here in a minute, but before we do, I just want to do one more shout out and thanks to all of our patrons at Patreon. As I mentioned, the Dotto Tech channel, all of the stuff that we create, all of the tutorial content that we create is supported through the generosity of you folks. In these webinars, we don't sell. Occasionally we promote something, but for the most part, these aren't sales webinars. There's going to be no call to action at the end. You aren't going to be told you have to buy something from us at the end of this webinar. They're straight up trainings that we share with you, but we are supported financially, and we're able to do this because of the support of you folks through Patreon. I see a lot of patrons here in the room enjoying the content and adding tremendous value. The community adds tremendous value as we go. So if you are interested, I just want to encourage you to drop by our Patreon account. If you go to patreon.com/Dottotech, And there you can see we just have two simple levels of membership. One is a basic level where you just say, we like you, Steve, and April. We want you guys to keep going, and you give us $3 a month. And then at $10 a month, we include some perks. And the perks include the replays of all of these videos that we are, of these webinars. This will be the 145th of those replays, which are in the archive, as well as discounts to our courses and our immense gratitude. I used to offer, I'm sad now, I used to offer free hugs if you saw me at conferences and stuff. But I'm sadly with the evolution of the virus, I think that's going to be a long time before we're just going to be able to ad hoc hug strangers because you appreciate them. But I am looking forward to that day coming back.
Yes, yes. You know what? I actually have a question, and I know we were doing comparison, contrast. How does the live feature work on Zoom? And Google Meet doesn't have like a live feature to go to a platform, correct? Okay,
so that's we had several questions about that. That you're able to take a Zoom call and you're able to send the feed through to Facebook Live or to YouTube Live into the different feeds.
Only as a webinar, though. Only as a webinar you can do that.
No, you can do it with this. You can do it with this. It's with the paid version. I don't think you can do it with the free, but I'm not positive. You might be able to do it with the free, but you can only go to a single source as far as that goes.
Right.
So you can only go to Facebook Live or you can only go to YouTube Live. Within Meet, they don't have any of those features. None of that is built in as far as streaming through. Now, to extend that question, because it'll be coming up in a few moments. They also asked, Jeffrey asked why I'm using Restream to go to YouTube and not Zoom or the other. So why am I delivering this webinar today in using Restream? And for a couple of reasons. One, I like the switching capability of Restream. It's a broadcasting tool rather than a video conferencing tool. So I don't necessarily need all of the meeting tools that you would normally have within Zoom, although we could certainly use them. But that's one reason that we use Restream. The second reason is just technically how clean the Restream feed is. And the third reason is Restream is designed for us to stream to multiple landing locations at the same time. So although in the early days of Webinar Wednesday right now, we are only streaming to YouTube Live, there might come a time that we decide to also stream this webinar through to our Facebook page or through to a LinkedIn live page or some other page, some other source in the future, and Restream will allow us to do that. So those are some of the reasons that we choose Restream. And whenever you look at any streaming tool or any broadcast tool, there's always a variety of different options. Somebody also asked why I'm not using Blackmagic, encoding tools and kind of more top-end professional tools. There's lots of ways that we can go about things, and there's lots of different ways to do a live stream or to do any sort of a broadcast. I use the tools that I have at my fingertips, ones that I'm comfortable with, ones that are already in the toolkit for the most part, or the pieces of software that I have tested and used and am comfortable with. But we could approach it from 32 different ways. One of my philosophies on delivering any sort of content like this is it's important what tool you choose, but more important than the tool you choose is how you choose to use that tool. In other words, if you dive in, if you really figure out how a tool works and test it out, and you build your business system around the tool you're using, you're going to be much farther ahead than looking for new features in different tools. And so we're still earlier. We've figured out Demio. We used Demio for ages. We used Webinar Jam before that. We really dive in and get to know these tools intimately. We're still in the early stages with Restream. We're just beginning. So is there lots of more questions coming? I'll just start at the top and you keep adding them, shall we, April? So we'll fast. If I can that was the question was just about, could we live stream to YouTube? Yes, you can in Zoom, but not in
I didn't even see the question and I asked the question.
Yes, you did. There we go. So Glee is asking, what's the difference in price between Meet and Zoom? So Meet is $6 a month, but it's part of the Google you don't buy Meet by itself. It's part of the entire Google the entire Google G Suite of products, which is $6 per month per user. Zoom, as we use it, is what's called the Pro version. Most people buy the Pro version. That'll give you up to 100 people in your meeting for unlimited time. and it is $15 a month. And that's the so that's the price that we pay. And we had several comments that I saw come through of other people who purchase Zoom. And Zoom is one of the no-brainers. If you are doing a lot of meetings and you're using Zoom, it's a no-brainer to purchase the account. At $15 a month, you get way more value than that. I think it's one of the best investments that you can make. Ami asks, personally, for me, which is more comfortable to use on Zoom, mobile or PC? I actually like both the applications. Now, I don't use it on a PC. I use it on a Mac, but I find Zoom on the Mac very comfortable to use. Of course, we use it every day, pretty much. But whenever I use it in mobile, whenever I use it on my smartphone or on my iPad, I'm always pleasantly surprised at how effortless it is and how well it works. They have done a terrific job on the mobile apps with Zoom. But I will say that Meet has also done a very good job. I have participated in meetings in mobile, and in some ways, I think that the Meet app on mobile is nicer to use than the browser-based version of Meet, because the browser-based version of Meet still feels a little bit like Hangouts. There's still some strange nomenclature, things like they call sharing your screen presenting, which I don't know why they fly in the face of convention, but they both do a great job as far as that is concerned. Okay, Ernie is saying, what do I think about the virtual filter, what do you think about virtual filer for Google Meet? I don't know what that means. So maybe you can clarify. I don't know what virtual filer is. So Garen's asking, but our company won't use Zoom due to security risks. Has that been addressed? Yes and no. Okay, so there is the actual meeting security, and then there's a privacy concern around Zoom, both. So let's talk first about the security of the meeting itself. The security of the meeting itself with Zoom primarily has been the issue of Zoom bombing, which was pretty prevalent early on in the days when COVID started first to hit and we started to do meetings from home. See, within Zoom, you can set up a permanent meeting room. With the pro version, you set it up, and I could have a meeting room, Zoom/Dottotech. And then any meeting that I have with anybody, I can give them the exact same URL, and they can come into that meeting time after time, and it will just be turned on and off. It's like a meeting room where you go in and you flip on the lights, you have a meeting, you go flip off the lights, and nobody's there. So it's persistent. The challenge was that people were discovering these URLs, because it's just something you click on, and they were Zoom bombing. They were jumping in, and they were swearing, and they were exposing themselves, and they were doing all sorts of just childish activities to disrupt. And of course, this happened because we had millions of high school students with lots of time on their hands and Zoom accounts that they were being forced to use for school. And it became a real hassle, and it became a real problem. So Zoom employed a variety of different security features to prevent Zoom bombing. One of the features they created was the waiting room. Now, there's a question later on whether you're asking about whether or not you can turn the waiting room off once the meeting begins so that you don't have to so that if somebody comes in late, they can enter. Yes, you control that through the security tab at the bottom of Zoom now. On the bottom left-hand side, there's a security tab. You can disable the waiting room, and then people can enter automatically. But the waiting room is one place that you now have protection. So Zoom by default now has a waiting room, so people don't automatically enter the room, that the host has to do it, and then the host has to admit the people or turn off the waiting room. So we've overcome the issue of Zoom bombing primarily through that, and also by slightly changing through education, letting people know that they shouldn't be using the same room and the same URL over and over again, and also more administrative controls where you can boot people out of your meeting more quickly and more readily. You have in that right hand the meeting bar where you see the roster of different people that are in the meeting. You have a lot more control. So I believe that as far as meeting security goes, Zoom has now stepped up to the challenge, and they are quite secure. As far as privacy goes, that's an issue where we're starting to hear where the kind of the fog of the disinformation age has caught up to Zoom, and it's a victim of it. As Zoom was growing in popularity and increasing in popularity, so was this penchant that we currently have for distrusting anything that comes out of China. And part of Zoom's programming and part of their team is Chinese. So there is a relationship between Zoom and China. And in fact, Zoom had a server farm in China. They have multiple farms around the world, but one of them, which repeats the signal. Think about if you're having a meeting from Vancouver and you've got people in Australia, you've got to, there has to be several different relays to get that signal through. So one of their relay stations was in China. So that was, you now have the ability to say, I don't want those Chinese servers to handle my traffic. If you are concerned, if you have any security concerns as far as that goes. And I think for the most part, people have started to recognize that Zoom is not a state agent, but is a software company that's working to develop the software. I won't get into the politics of it and argue back and forth. If you still feel unsafe with it, then don't use it. Then there's lots of other good tools. But I'm not going to get into whether or not they're good people or bad people. I think their technology is kick-ass. That's as far as I will go on that particular story.
Good
All right.
answer.
That was a long rant. There's a lot of security stuff. So Jim is asking, can you use Meet with someone who does not use a Chrome web browser? Yes, it's just a basic web tool, so it can work in any web browser. They can use Brave, they can use Safari, they can use any web browser. That's not an issue. Lynn's asking, what about for doctoral dissertations in human research subjects? Can you encrypt a Zoom meeting or Meet videos as well as the transcriptions? I don't know if they can be encrypted because you'd have to have the video is encrypted end to end already, so somebody can't interrupt it in the middle. But if you're talking about taking the recording, I guess you could manually encrypt it. I'm not too sure what you're referring to as far as the privacy goes, but I know that they are being used for dissertations. And now that they've increased the viability of the Zoom rooms and the waiting rooms, that the security is meeting many universities' requirements. But I can't speak to as far as what other encryption you guys might want. Innovative journaling. I think that's Greg, right? What about privacy? Google. This is on a different topic. Google Mail already reads our mails and then sends us advertising based on our email account. Where might that go with video conferencing? Yes, indeed. Where might it go? I mean, Google tells us that they're not really crawling through our transcript as they're listening for any reason other than to just provide us the service that they're offering. But let's face it, our trust, the amount of trust that we give them is a fairly short leash at this point. And I know I just said that I'm not going to get into the political discussion on the Chinese thing. I probably shouldn't get into the political discussion here on transcripts as well, other than say I agree with your concern, and I think we should all be concerned about it. We should all be asking, and we should all be thinking long and hard about what the ramifications of Google being able to listen in on our meetings if we're using Google Meet are. But that conversation goes well beyond Google Meet. That technology, knowing how good voice recognition technology is, which is, I think, eye-opening to a lot of us, but knowing how good it is should give us all pause when we think about the fact that there's a microphone in every device. On our iPhone, there's a microphone. Apple has the same ability to be able to listen. Google, Amazon with the Alexa, Google with their Home. There's lots of things that are listening to us now, and you now can see how they can turn it into a searchable form as a text search instantly and incredibly accurately. The new version of Apple's iOS has a feature built into the software now that there's a couple little dots at the top of your iPhone, one of which tells you if the microphone is being accessed, and the other tells you if the camera is being accessed, to let you know Apple is recognizing that you want to be able to know when your phone is listening and when it's not, as well as when it's seeing and when it's not. We're just at the very beginning of this conversation, and your question is totally well placed. But what it is right now is it's a point of us to pay attention. We don't have answers. What is the Zoom add-on for captioning? The one that I use is the same one that we use for our transcripts. It's a service from Rev, R-E-V. And I don't know if you have time to find the link for it, April. But I think it's $20 a month to add it on, and It is definitely a bolt on. You know, you have a whole new menu and you have your whole new pop-up window at the top of the Zoom screen when it's running, and it runs, and it's pretty good, but it is laggier. It's as accurate as Google's as far as I can tell, but it is laggier. And we all tested out whether or not it does swear words, and it just puts in little asterisks.
We did test it out because Steve has the foulest mouth on the team, right? No, I'm kidding.
I probably do, but
no.
Okay, Ralph is asking, have you used the alternative host feature in Zoom? Our organization has a single host pro license, and we may need someone to have someone other than our Zoom admin host a meeting. Is this possible? Well, they can certainly log in with it. I'm not too sure how it works as far as creating meetings and not. We all just kind of work under the same account. That's a good question, and I'm sorry, Ralph, I don't have a great answer for you. You'd have to look into the Zoom help section for that, because I wouldn't want to lead you astray. Does Zoom have auto moderation? No, it doesn't. Lynn says, I got someone else's answer to my subscriber question. Can one sign up for the $3 a month account and then upgrade to $10 and still get the benefits, or do you have to buy it correctly from the start? If you're talking about our Patreon account, it's not you're buying an account. You're supporting us as a supporter on Patreon. And at $3 a month, you just get our thanks, and at $10 a month, you get access to all of the benefits. As far as the webinar Wednesday, etc. And so if you upgrade in the middle, if we get notification that you started at $3 and then you've upgraded on Patreon, we then let you know right away, and we enroll you into the webinar Wednesday archives and the other perks. So we have a system in place that we know what your support level is, and then you are perked. You are sent messages to let you into the proper level. Okay. Does Zoom work well using a VPN? Is Stathi? Question. I haven't tried it, but it should work fine in a VPN. We did a test last week on the speeds of VPNs, and if you're dealing with a local host, it's going to be much faster. But you are going to deal with the bandwidth issue. That's one area that Zoom is surprising with. It almost very seldom. We use Zoom. How many meetings do you think we have? We have maybe 2 or 3 meetings a day in Zoom.
Yes. And some of them are very lengthy.
April's on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast. And I would say that 1 out of 15, 1 out of 20, we have issues. And that's mainly because April works between her lake house and the downtown, the house in town.
I'm very mobile.
And their chalet up in the mountains that they ski in or something. But very seldom do the technology is really good. It's very seldom do we have any issues. So I suspect it would work fine over a VPN. What are we doing for time? We've got 3 minutes. David's asking, it seems the desktop client for the Mac wants to control the OS updates and disables OS updates. I'm not too sure what that's referring to. Tatiana says, can you recommend programs to record better quality audio than what Zoom offers? I find the quality so low when editing Zoom interviews, even at the highest settings that Zoom allows. So recording interviews, there's a couple of different ways that you can go about that. So what I suspect you're doing, what's happening here is Tatiana is using it as an interview tool for recording podcast interviews or something along that line. So you could test other tools. You could test using Skype and Skype Call Recorder for that. Or you could also, we use Ecamm. Ecamm has an interview feature now on the Mac that you could try and use. And if you're still not getting good quality audio for interviews, and if you don't need video, there are a couple of audio services where you can sign up and they do cloud recording on both sides. In other words, I can't remember the name now. I'll try and remember it before we send out the email, Tatiana. But for podcasters, do research on podcasting and doing the best quality podcast interviews. And there you can use other tools that will record in the web and then give you a better quality recording. If that still fails and you're technically competent enough, you can ask your guest to record their side of the conversation locally. You record your side of the conversation locally. You bring the 2 files together, and then you edit them together. And that's going to give you the best possible quality for audio files. So there are ways to improve it. And if you just do a little bit of search in the podcasting space, you're going to get a lot of that. And oh, look at that. April says, winner, winner, chicken dinner. That's all done. So it looks like we got through all the questions just at the top of the hour.
You
How
like my note
perfect
at the
is
bottom. So no, who is the winner again? Some people came in late, so they wanted to know, was it Zoom or was it Google Meet? Who was the winner?
Well, Zoom is a way better program. At the end of the day, Zoom is way, way better. But Google is going to be there. So, I hate to vacillate. But if you're going to say, Steve, you only can use one video conferencing tool out of all of them out there, I'm going to choose Zoom. There's no question. Its features, it's rock solid. It gives me the ability to just come up with creative ways to do things in meetings, to incorporate every piece of technology on my desk one way or the other, to record the meetings, to have breakout rooms, way more. It just does that much more. But Google Meet's free. And it's right there in Gmail. And it's pretty darn good if I just want to have a quick little call. So it does, my life would still be rich if I had to use Google Meet for all of our meetings. And I don't think we would get any less done and there would be any less vibrancy in the Dottotech system if we were just using Meet as our tool.
I agree.
But given choice, you can get around, you can drive around in in a little Toyota. But if you got a nice, luxury vehicle, life seems a little bit sweeter. We'll say it that way. All right. Next week, something special. We are returning our App Wednesday. Back when I did my radio show, I used to once a month have a contest where I would bring in some smart people who use technology really well, and they would share their favorite apps, ones that fly under the radar, ones that we don't necessarily hear about. And we turned it into a game show where they would share their favorite apps. We would vote on the best app, and there would be a champion of App Wednesday. It's a great way to discover all sorts of new things, new tools that you never knew anything about from some really smart people. So we're going to start with our new streaming format here on Dottotech on App Wednesday. Once a month, the last Wednesday of each month, we're going to do App Wednesday. So next week, it's going to be App Wednesday. Not so serious, lots of fun, but surprisingly valuable pieces of technology will come by that could be life changers for you one and all. At the very least, it's the most enjoyable hour of live streaming that you'll ever have in the middle of the day. I can promise you that. So next week, it's App Wednesday. Keep your eye on your email. We will be sending you the replay. If you haven't signed up for the replay, for the email with the resources, make sure April will drop the link in one more time. Make sure that you've signed up so that we can email you out the resources, including the playlists and all of our resources that we have for Zoom and Meet. April, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. You're awesome.
To our patrons, thank you. We will see you guys all next week for more Webinar Wednesday. Till then, have fun storming a cat.